Um, so I started this podcast as like a passion project to talk about people's journeys. And your journey is quite incredible, Erin. And I'm super glad you said yes. This lovely conversation. I know we didn't spend a whole lot of time together working together, but you've always really impressed me in many, many ways. And when I saw what you're up to in LinkedIn, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta talk to her. I was like, I gotta see what this girl's up to. So I wanted to begin with your synchronized swimming career. Like how I don't know if we ever spoke about it, but it's such a rare sport to pursue as a Canadian athlete. You know, a lot of us tend to know our winter athletes more than our summer athletes for sure. And so did you have what was that journey, and who are the individuals that why synchronized swimming, and who are the individuals that helped you get there?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be part of this. And it's funny because sometimes I'm like, my journey is just my journey, you know, but it's really nice to hear that other people are interested in it. Hopefully they are. So to start, I was just a really active kid, like way too active for my parents, probably. And I was just a kid that played every sport and did whatever. I had an older brother, and so whatever he did, I wanted to do. And that was kind of how what defined my childhood up until I was probably 10 or 11 years old. But I was also the kid who would play a sport one year and then get bored of it. And then my mom would have to find another sport. And I love running around, but I'd always get bored of whatever sport I was doing. So I've literally tried everything under the sun. So then my mom just had to start getting really creative with the sports that she was putting me in, because she's like, what else can I do? And so synchronized swimming was one of the ones that, it was across the street from my brother's hockey rink on the same days. So it kind of was just put you in there and see how you like it. And I ended up falling in love with it. And I don't even know why, but it was fun. It was exciting. It was different. I liked that it was unique and kind of something that none of my friends were really doing. It kind of gave me my own little niche in my world of, going to school. And I was in a very, my middle school was very mean girl style. And so sometimes it was oh, I could, I have my own safety zone, and it was the sport. And so that was a big part of it too.
Right.
But yeah, so I started in synchro. I wasn't good. At least I don't think I was good. I was the kid who came last at so many competitions, but it was one of my main coaches who I had from the time I was 11 to 17. She kind of picked me out of the group and was basically said, I have a lot of potential, and she wanted to work with me. And her name was Elena Podolsky, and she was the most amazing coach I've probably ever had in my life. And yeah, she just kind of helped me and drag me through the years where I was still growing and my limbs were too big for my body and hadn't quite figured out the coordination thing, which I think is something that a lot of dancers go through.
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Yeah.
Where it's you have a lot of potential, you're just not there yet. Yeah, she helped me through all of it and just made it such an amazing experience. For the longest time, I wasn't good, and I just loved it so much. I loved the people that I was meeting. I loved my friends. Some of them to this day are still my best friends that I call every night. So it was just a really amazing experience. And then she was right, and I apparently did have some potential. And so I kind of kept going with my career and made some national teams. The first one when I was 16 or 17, and kind of went from there.
Right. Was she, so for those listening, Erin is an Olympian.
Yes.
Went to the Olympics in summer of 2012, right?
That's correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And was this coach around during that time?
She wasn't. Once I made the national team, I had to move to Quebec because that's where you're training. And that's kind of where I was introduced to some of the other coaches. And so things changed a little bit in terms of my career, and it was a little bit more challenging. I went from having a coach who was so supportive and so loving and caring and cared about me, not just as an athlete, as a synchronized swimmer, but as a person. She got every aspect of me. She would be concerned if my friends and I were in a fight, or my teammates and I were in a fight, she'd be no, that's important. You have to go and fix that. And I also wasn't a person who had like the most amount of confidence when I was going up and swimming. And so she was kind of the person who like would instill confidence in me like every single day. And then I moved to the national team and started training in Montreal. I moved there when I was 17. And I kind of got thrown into the deep end. I was my first year on the team. Again, I was 17 and most of the people had been on the team for 3 or 4 years. And it was the year right before the 2008 games. And so I was just, the young kid on the team who was not really sure why she was there. And everyone else was really fighting for their spots because there was, I think, 14 of us on the team and only 9 went to Olympics. So it was just this hyper competitive zone, and the coaches didn't really care about me. They didn't really pay attention to me. Like, I think one of them didn't even know my name to this day, probably still doesn't know my name.
Right.
And this was a person that I was training 8 hours a day with 6 days a week. So it definitely opened up my eyes to different styles of coaching. And that kind of defined a lot of my national team career, and especially like the 4 years leading up to the Olympics. So I didn't make the 2008 games. I didn't make those 9, which was not unexpected. But then 2009, I started training again until 2012. And yeah, the coaches were just a whole different breed of kind of, their style was break you down to build you up. And it just wasn't something that I really responded to or really understood, especially not being taught like that for a long time. And then, so definitely a different style of coaching towards the national team.
Right. And actually I had another question, but that kind of leads me to one of my questions that I did have this year, especially, or the last few years. Athletes and mental health have been a huge conversation around that, right? Especially this year from the Summer Olympics. And I was wondering if you had support through your career as an athlete. It sounds like you had that when you were younger, but it sounded like that switched. And what was like that for you? And how did you navigate that? And did you have other people or coaches or mentors in your life that helped you navigate that in terms of your mental health as an athlete?
Yeah. So I guess it's not really a surprise that when being in this new environment and with all the stressors that were happening, my mental health definitely declined. And some of that was me personally, again, not having a lot of confidence and being in an environment that really broke that down. But my coach was pretty brutal. And I was constantly told that I was overweight, that I needed to lose weight. My spot on the team was threatened because I wasn't skinny enough. And for context, I think I was 132 pounds and 5'8". So
that's small, people, that's small. For context.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and there was just a lot of like heavy competition. She would pit us against each other. She would scream at me all day for any sort of reasons. And so all of that just took such a toll on my mental health. Like, I was really lucky to have a lot of external support though during that time. My parents were definitely the biggest, like my mom and my dad, like they were the biggest source of support. I ended up moving in with one of my aunts who was living in Montreal. And she was like the biggest support, and especially at the times where I was at my lowest, because she would see me every day and she would always be like so concerned. And so I was so lucky to have her in Montreal as well. We did have a sports psychologist as well, but he was more kind of focused on the performance aspect rather than like the mental health aspect. So it was hard because he was a male, he was older, he was very good at what he did, and he ended up helping me a little bit later on, but at this, like, especially with eating disorders and things like that, like that wasn't an area that he was comfortable doing. And he kind of was the first to admit that, like, I don't know how to help you. And they're more like focused on performance. So it's kind of understandable, but at that time I didn't really have anyone supporting my needs where I needed them.
Wow.
From a professional standpoint.
Wow. Complete sidebar. Do you think that has changed since you've been in the sport? Do you think there's more support now?
I don't think so. And I can kind of say that with certainty because I was actually I'm currently involved in a lawsuit against my sport organization.
Right.
And then there's also a lot of current athletes who have recently spoken out. So I don't know for sure, but it seems like there's not really the support that they're needing. I think that there is starting to be more of a push just in Canadian sport, recognizing the need for mental health support and not just performance support. And I know that there's some systems in place, but
Right.
yeah.
Slow for change, but change is coming. It sounds that way.
Yeah.
I know you got into coaching yourself at some point. So who opened up the doors for you in coaching, and what kind of coach were you, given your history? What kind of style did you adopt when you trained those athletes?
Yeah, for sure. It was actually interesting because when I stopped swimming, I was pretty done. Like I was pretty, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to think about it. Like I was just ready to be done. And so I didn't think coaching was ever something that I wanted to do, but it was kind of one of those things. I was in university and I was working at a gym with you.
Exactly.
And I kind of got to a point where I was doing the math of like, I can make 3 times as much more money as a coach than I do as like a receptionist at a gym. And it's something that I like doing. And so I kind of got my feet wet at the beginning just with a local club in Toronto, and just took on like a duet. So it was only 2 people instead of, full team. And so I did that for a year. And honestly, the girls I coached were the ones that made me fall in love with it. They were awesome. Like I still have so much warmth in my heart for them to this day, but I wanted to be the coach that I didn't have, the coach that cared about them as people, who wanted to foster their development in sport, out of sport. Like I tried to make a point of every day coming in and like the first thing, like how's school going, how's life, like actually checking in and genuinely caring about them. And like these 2 girls specifically, like I coached them for 4 years, so all throughout their high school career, and saw them grow and develop, and just had such a like lovely bond with them. And I definitely was hard. I think I was probably their hardest coach, given that my own career in sport went pretty far. Like I was pretty tough on them, but I think it was always out of love, and I don't think I hardly ever yelled at them. I know it's hard to break some of those habits. It's hard to kind of move away from some of those experiences that's how I would have technically been taught how to coach. And so it was a conscious decision of like, oh yeah, these things aren't right. And there's other ways to coach. And so it kind of was like teaching myself those balances. And I think, I don't know, I hope that that's what they believe, but I know the last year I coached them, they sent me like a whole letter. And like the best part of it was like, thank you for teaching me, teaching us how to be successful, but more important, caring about us. And like, for me, that like was my definition of success, was that it wasn't just about performance. And like, that was something that we talked about like all the time. Like even at their, competitions where they weren't doing so well, I'm like, I don't care about what that score is. I care about you 2 being together and like working together. Mm-hmm. And like, you guys need to figure yourselves out, because that's what I care about.
Right. Did you have any mentors while you were coaching these young women? Did you have any mentors that you could bounce things off of at the time? Or is this all instinct?
I think it was a lot of instinct. There's definitely like, we had an amazing team of coaches. I was often paired up with another coach as well. So some of them were great, but it was kind of instinct. And then just thinking back to the coaches I had when I was younger. So like Elena and another one, Sheila, who were just amazing to me, and wanting to recreate that.
Nice. I mean, that learning from the past in both ways, both positive and negative,
Yeah.
Being the type of coach that you would want for yourself, which is really beautiful. So now your career is taking you into safe sport research, which is a crucial subject right now. Talk a little bit about that, and talk to me about the professors or teachers or mentors that got you involved in that aspect of your career.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So again, I don't think it was an area that I ever thought I would be in. I know we've spoken a little bit about my own experiences and leaving sport. The biggest thing is, after I quit swimming, I was just so broken. Like that's the only way I can describe it. Like I needed a lot of help, just because my confidence was crushed. My self-esteem was the lowest it had ever been. Like it was such it was really sad for me that I'd reached the top of my career as an athlete, like the echelon that every athlete is dreams of. And at the same time, I was so broken during that time. And so for me, it was just such a hard thing. Like, it just didn't feel right. Like, it didn't feel right that like I was in this position where everyone is excited. Like, how's the Olympics? How is this? How is that? And like, my honest answer was that it wasn't good. And like, obviously there was a lot of great things, and there's a lot of, I'm not saying it was all negative. Like, there were so many positives, but in my heart of hearts, like, I wasn't okay as a person. And so that was something that was just kind of always struck me as sad. Like, and I know I wasn't the only one who was going through that, but it just seemed, it's a side of sport that people don't talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But so I, took a couple of years off and then started to get back into coaching. And then I started doing a degree in business, because what else does one do as an athlete? You figure that you need a business degree because sports don't last forever. And then eventually that led me back into kinesiology, because, I was kind of back into sport and realized that was what I loved. And then my last year of my undergrad, I started doing some research looking at in a body image lab. So her name is Catherine Sabiston. She was a professor, and she does a lot of work in body image and things like that. And so I got involved in her lab and just absolutely fell in love with it. Like, absolutely fell in love with the research they were doing all around like body shame and different emotions that can happen. And so that kind of made me decide to go and explore a master's, and now I'm doing my PhD in that. And I guess when I was working with her specifically, they were more focused on body image and body shaming specifically. And I guess I kind of realized that was one piece of the puzzle. And in my mind, it was really important because that was my own experience. But there's so many other ways that athletes experience pain in sport, both like physically, emotionally, all of those things. And then also, if we were to tackle the problem, you kind of need to take a step back and realize that there's so many behaviors that are problematic from coaches that you kind of need to attack them all. And so that moved me more into the abuse side. And I was really fortunate to have a professor. Her name is Gretchen Kerr. She's my supervisor now. She was also at U of T, and she was studying abuse in sport. And she's one of the most prominent people in Canada and the world in this field. And so I had a meeting with her, kind of told her a little bit about my background, both personally and professionally, and from an athletic perspective. And she was gracious enough to offer me a spot as her master's student.
Yeah. And this is currently what you're doing as a PhD candidate, correct?
Yes, I am currently a PhD candidate. So I've been in the program for 5 years now, and we study all different types of abuse in sport. So I started more on the emotional abuse and body shaming side, and then it's kind of expanded to all forms of abuse, including physical, emotional, sexual, and neglect as well. And harassment and discrimination is something that I'm getting more and more into as I start to understand the differences in people's, different diversity and identity aspects can really influence their experience of maltreatment. So yeah, that's kind of what I do.
That's incredible and really important work right now. And like I said, I feel like there's a greater conversation happening, which I haven't seen in other fields. So it's incredible the work that you're doing. Besides the professor that is now your mentor or your supervisor for your PhD, do you have a lot of allies in both inside and outside in this space? Do you feel in general?
Yeah, I feel like I've gotten pretty lucky. So definitely my supervisor, just again, it is one of those things where she's my boss, but she's also such a caring person. Like, she kind of embodies everything that I think coaching should be, where she's supportive, she's like fosters my autonomy, and she just cares about me so much as a person. Like, she's just helped me through everything. There's two other professors at the university that I work really closely with. One's Dr. Ashley Sterling, and she is also in the lab, and she does amazing work. And then Dr. Bruce Kidd, who was an Olympian, I think in the 70s, he was a runner. He's a very awesome person, has pretty much been fighting for like gender equity and all types of equity in sport. So those two have been amazing allies for me as well. Between the three of them, they've taught me so much in sport and so much outside of sport. I I mean, my lab mates, like all of them, there's, I think 7 of them right now. We all learn from each other and learn from each other's experiences. And I don't know what I would be, where I'd be without them, because they help me, every single day.
Right.
And then outside of sport, I've really tried to build, outside of research, I've tried to build more of a sport community. So I'm now on the board of organizations called Athletes Can. And they represent all national team athletes. So they're really the voice of the athletes in Canadian sport. So they sit on like all Sport Canada calls and things like that, and really advocate for the athlete's voice and for the athletes to have proper representation. So they at least have the seat at the table when decisions are being made about them. So they worked with me on my master's project, which was a prevalence study of maltreatment of national team athletes. So we tried to understand the rates of maltreatment that exist in Canadian sport right now. And so they were a partner on that. And just that whole organization has just been incredible support. Like the president, the manager, everyone like there has just been incredible in helping me on this fight and helping me get into the places where I can amplify my voice and put me on boards where I'm making decisions and put me in conversations where I'm making decisions about all safe sport policies and things like that. So yeah, a lot of people that are very supportive.
No, it's great. It's important to have allies, and these are the people that just make space for you to have that voice, right? Which is really important as a young researcher and advocate in your field. So I guess, what type of change do you hope to see in the next 10 years? What is your big dream for the sport?
Honestly, I feel like the joke is I hope that I don't have a job in this field. I hope that that this is not something that I need to be employed in.
Wow.
I think it's going to take more than 10 years, but that's my biggest hope, is that that things change. I think it's going to take a lot. I think there's a lot of cultural change that needs to happen. But I think for me, the biggest thing is getting coaches and sport organizations and other athletes to understand you can be a happy, healthy athlete and in a safe environment and still be high performance. Right now, there's just this notion that you can't have both. And I fundamentally don't agree with that. And so for me, that's what I would define as my success, is if I can get athletes to be happy, healthy, safe, and achieving all their dreams.
I love that. That's an incredible goal. And I think your research will not only help athletes, but it's going to help any high performance, whether that's a retired dancer like myself, or dancers who are out there, or singers, or anybody who's in any type of high performance. I think that research is going to be really critical. Can we read any your thesis or anything? Maybe not for your PhD, but for your master's. Is it available anywhere for people to search and read if they want to get more information?
Yeah, for sure. My thesis is available. I think it's just on the U of T's repository, but I believe those are all available for the public. Okay. And I have some recent publications. There's one that's a shorter version of my thesis if you don't want to read 100 pages. But it was just published and it is open access. So that one's available online as well. So it's called The Prevalence of Maltreatment on National Team Athletes in Canada. So
okay. That's great. That's super great. So I don't really do some fun rapid fire questions about just your life in general. So my first one is, in terms of your ultimate space maker, the person that has been there for every opportunity, do you have that one person?
My mom.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, for sure. My mom.
Nice. So sometimes athletes, performers are really superstitious. Did you have anything when you were an athlete that you carried with you, any kind of token or charm or anything that you used during your competition days?
Not necessarily a physical object, but one of my teammates and I, her name was Jen, we would always have a dance party right before we swam. And because I would just get super nervous. And so it kind of was just our 2 minutes, and we always had a new song and we would always just dance, just shake it all out and dance it out.
Nice. You spoke about it being tough at times. Was there a time that you wanted to quit, or did you quit and come back?
There was a lot of times that I wanted to quit. Yeah, there was, especially like probably the 2 years leading up to the Olympics, it was definitely something that was on my mind quite a bit.
But you persevered. So
persevered, I'm glad I did. But yeah.
Nice. And who are you making space for in your life now?
That's a great question. Honestly, right now, my family. I think that's the biggest thing. I have like a little niece and a nephew, and I'm obsessed with them and want to spend all my time with them.
As you should.
I think we're really lucky to be a close family, but we definitely make a point of always spending time together. So
lovely. Well, Erin Wilson, thank you so much for doing this interview. I find the work that you're doing so crucial and so important, and I'm so glad you sat down with me to talk a little bit about your journey, and hopefully it inspires people to get more involved in the work that you're doing. And I wish you like the best of luck.
Thank you so much. Honestly, this means so much to me, and I'm so happy that you're doing this podcast and giving the voice to people. And I think I admire this so much. Just it's so important to recognize all the people in your life that you're helping or helping you. And I think it's amazing that you're putting this together.
Thank you so much. And can we please go for coffee at some point?
Yeah, I'm around.
Okay. Thank you for your time, and we'll talk very soon.
Yeah. It was so nice to see you.
So nice to see you too. Bye.